starting to edge more where it's going to be more, hopefully weeks like we're supposed to have this week. So it's all good. Because it's starting to get fall. Hey, I tried to mow the grass. Actually got to mow the grass because Frida I was allowed to mow the grass, I should say. And it felt like I was mowing dirt because I looked back and going through dust and all that. And then of course the PTO clutch goes out. So one time I do get on the lawnmower out there, I guess I tear that. So anyway, but yeah, getting into September here, they just roll along. We'll be wondering what we're having for Thanksgiving here for a long moment. So, all right, Daniel chapter 7. We continue, and we've kind of really slowed down. We're just going one section at a time right now as we kind of get into the prophecy and stuff. And I can say this: I was reading as I was studying this. Studying Daniel's made me understand Revelation better, especially when it mentions the fourth beast in Revelation. Now it clicks, maybe, like I said, I may be the one that's late to the party on that, but, an understanding. But, and like I said, you can see the parallel and stuff right there. So just kind of get off just some discussion here. Basically what's Daniel been teaching us about powerful earthly kingdoms? What's he been saying? Or what I won't say he's been saying, what's kind of been the theme, I guess, whether it was kingdoms or kings or all-powerful rulers.
Somebody else comes along with more power and takes over in some cases.
Temporary, aren't they? Yeah, that's just temporary. Somebody, there's always, the next guy, you get to all-powerful and things like that. And we see that all that is temporary, and kind of just some examples as we go back, through history. Been a lot of kingdoms and nations probably seemed unstoppable in their time, but now they're just part of history. You think about it, I guess if you were during the time of the Roman rule that we read about in the New Testament, I don't know if we really understand probably how. Would oppressive be a good word to describe the time right there? Or how much influence or power they had, and what are some other nations, and maybe not even back in that time, or it could be before, I don't know. Can we think more? I guess if you was in France in 1940, probably the Nazi war machine probably seemed pretty unstoppable at the time, did it?
Back in the day, England.
Yes. During the colonial times, I guess all the way up through 16th, 17th, 18th century. They were. Or what was it? They used to say the sun never set on the empire or something like that, didn't it? So England. You got Spain in there a little bit. They had some influence, but all the kingdoms have come and gone, but what do we see based on Daniel's and Revelation prophecy? What's the eventual fate for all nations and kingdoms on earth? What's going to happen to them?
They fall.
They're all going to fall. There's only one eternal kingdom, and I think that's the theme of today. And it's really the last couple of weeks. It's really got me thinking, trying to put some things in perspective and worried about some stuff as we kind of get into that. So yeah, but at the end of the day, and like I said, we'll kind of get into that, and that's kind of the theme. Like I said, the eternity of God's kingdom. And I think we think about it, I think we know about it, but we really start kind of, I won't say the word dwell, but I've got to say the name, but when you really start, really get into it and analyzing what's going, it should be a condition that gives us the ultimate of always hope, faith that in the end it's going to work out. There's always one little thing that gets in the way of that. Sometimes us humans, we're not the most patient people in the world, are we? That gets us. So, what is it? Lord, I pray that you give me patience, and I pray you give it to me now. Yeah. That's like the old joke, But yeah, patience and things, and and it's it's tough. It's tough. I get it. And so let's kind of take a look right here. Let's get into the scripture. First section of scripture right there, Daniel 7:23 and 24. Can somebody read that so y'all don't have to listen to me all the time? Got it right there on the paper. So
I'll read it.
go ahead.
Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings.
Okay, thank you. Now, once again, how many times do we go back when Daniel is referencing the vision of the 4 kingdoms, the beast, the statue, everything? The fourth kingdom that he refers to always gets a little more detailed on. We see that again, and as I've been teaching Sunday school for I don't even know how many years now. I mean, I can still remember Bobby Aderholt sitting in my Sunday school class right over here before. And but the thing is, it seems like I've read is that when in the Bible, when something keeps getting repeated over and over and over again, there's something there trying to say, hey, it's drawing your attention to it. Even in you think about it, Jesus says, "Verily, verily." That's a sign, hey, you really need to lock in on this and pay attention. I think the same way. We keep seeing the same theme over and over again. And I get worried every time I study this. I'm like, they're going to say, you're just teaching the same thing every week up here. And trying to get a different twist on it. But again, we get significant detail about the 4th kingdom and beast. And in our book right here, right there at the beginning on page 195, it says that this last of the 4 kingdoms will be different in 2 key ways. And it says that the first is the leader will expressly be against Christ, hence the term Antichrist. I mean, his name itself literally means I'm against Christ, against God. And it's going to be energized by Satan. And second, it's going to be different. It's not going to be probably, from the way I see this, it's not embracing a single geographical territory, but rather engulfing the entire world. So we're not going to be talking about, we think of a kingdom or a country, hey, this is the boundaries. It's going to be, I don't know, it's going to be worldwide. It's from what, and I have a hard time wrapping, I'm about maps and borders. Hey, here's the line. This is Alabama, that's Mississippi. This is Walker County, that's Marion County. And or whatever. And just funny joke here. So it's kind of cut through the tension right here. Winston County, Marion County. We're cutting through Houston right there on the way to Meek to play Friday night. And one of the coaches I'm riding with, hey, there's a shooting house here. I want you to check out. So I'm thinking this thing's going to be like a glam man shooting house. Okay, we get over there, and he goes, well, right here it is. And they'd taken an old porta potty, cut some windows out in it, and that was their shooting house. And I was like, we're definitely in Winston County, and I worked and lived there for a while, so I can make fun of it. So, but anyway, getting back, there's no, and again, it's just one of those things I can't wrap my hand. To me, it seems like as I read about this, and again, one of those things that I always have to keep reminding myself. I get scared. I'm not going to have to worry about it because thanks to Jesus and His blood. But I don't know. I still like to think now that you start like study this. You scare me to death. But then I realize I don't have anything to worry about. But I just can't get my hands around the idea that maybe borders are going to be kind of dissolving and stuff. I don't know. But anyway, the Antichrist. Just a few things there that it talks about. They're still in 195. It says it's going to be an unparalleled military ruler, and his military exploits will not be regional, but it's going to be global. It's going to be global. So it kind of, that kind of gets me gets my mind wandering because I've gotten more and more in it. But we just keep seeing here this reference to this 4th beast, and it's just more destructive, dominating, overwhelming. And it's kind of here. The book also references Revelation 6:2 and 13:4, and let me go to that real quick and I'll read that because it kind of kind of references, how talks about the Antichrist, and 6:2, and it says, and I saw and behold a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and the crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. And then 13:4, and they worshiped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshiped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him? So that's kind of the mindset of what people were thinking about. Whoever the Antichrist is, it's like, man, this guy's it. Of course, that's the deception. But and it's going to be one of those things where, and that's the part that kind of gets me. It's just going to rise from nowhere, and then all of a sudden be the most powerful person on earth. But anyway, let's go to verse as we look at verse 24 now. Page 196, it talks about horns, and horns were used as symbols of power and might, because you got to think, what are horns used for by animals? Protection or weapons. So they're a sign of life. So that'd be one of those things where there might be something today as we look at that we would see as in that. Like I said, we would see a symbolism there. We go around in that culture daily. A lot of the things that are used here as imagery, it would just jump out at us. It would be, get what I'm saying. So from there, the horns were symbols. The 11th horn, of course, is representative of the Antichrist, and it's going to emerge. And I'd like to say, it's going to emerge from insignificance to absolute control and dominance. And it says it's going to uproot 3 other kings, or is that kings or kingdoms, or just kind of that kind of interchangeable right there. So my question is this: I started really thinking about this, and kind of, okay, can kingdoms rise? What are the 10 kingdoms going to be? Where are they going to be located? Does the United States have a role in this?
And will they act, my question was, will they really be kings or just leaders? Because we're getting fewer and fewer monarchies every year. Europe used to be ruled by the monarchies, and of course they were all intermarried into the front, and that's how they kept things going. But now the monarchies are not powerful. Most of them are, like the King of England now, there's very little power. The Prime Minister is who has the power. So, do you think it's going to be just leaders, or will it actually be kings, or in the monarchy sense?
I've always kind of interpreted it as being like a nation.
Just in a leader, okay?
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of how it would have to be,
Right.
because we just don't have those monarchies anymore.
It would be like, say, Ukraine, France, Spain, or Spanish, Italy,
Russia.
and Russia. Well, Russia's going to be one of the ones that's coming in from the east. So I don't think it'll be Russia, or China, or India.
See, they're the biggies. I mean, they're,
Maybe that's what, I don't know, maybe that would be pretty costly.
They're going to be the ones that come in, at the Battle of Armageddon. Yeah, they're going to cross over the river Jordan or Nile, I can't remember exactly, and surround Jerusalem.
And that's the armies that are going to rise against. So that's what
Yeah.
it's just taking me 4 years to kind of get, like I said, the first 35 was just get courage to read about it, because that was scary. But yeah, I think, and again, that's kind of got me thinking, but again, as we start to get anxious, I go back to the title, and the attorney, at the end of the day, who is sovereign over earth? It's God. And that's got to be a comfort and a faith to us. All it's understandable. So anyway, we go to now, probably the main discussion today is going to be verse 25. But that's kind of, just kind of before we get into that, just kind of as we get into nation, that's something that popped in my mind. I never thought, United States is going to be one of those 10. What's our role going to be?
Very likely.
Yeah, because just, the influence of, like I said, the Roman Catholic Church over here and stuff, it would probably be. So, but at the end of the day, who saw? So let's go to verse 25, and if I could, would somebody mind reading verse 25?
In chapter 7.
Yes, ma'am.
And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws, and they shall be given into his hand until a time and times, and the dividing of time.
All right. So we're seeing right there, Antichrist, like I said, it just starts out, he's going to be blasphemous against God. And that's kind of our book right here on page 190. I think I have 196 to 198. It just talks about, it says, and we've heard this, we've studied this, that, like it was, we all have our friends, but the Antichrist is going to be a rhetorical genius, a master of the spoken word. We got those friends, like I say, I've got a friend always saying he sells stuff to an instrument, and they just can talk, and before you know it, they can have you believe the sky's green if you don't watch it. But that's, and again, back to a serious tone though, but that's the way Antichrist is going to be. He's going to be a speaker, a great speaker that's going to be able to manipulate people into believing things that, that are not, simply, they're just not true. And it says here, down here on the book on page 196, under where it talks about Daniel 7:25, it says, much that comes from the mouth of the Antichrist will be blasphemous. And I've always liked, as I've taught, I've always liked when it gets into the root meanings of the Greek and the Hebrew words for blasphemy. It says, carries the idea of injuring the reputation of another. Biblically, the meaning can range from lack of reverence for God to an extreme contempt for God or a sacred object. It can involve speaking evil against God, involve showing contempt for the true God by making claims of divinity for oneself. If you remember, that was the one that the Pharisees, probably one they used right there, when Jesus claimed he was the Son of Man. I think it's just this is off the top of my head, but I think the term was, who is this man that blasphemies or whatever, And the most heinous blasphemy found in the pages of Scripture relates to the Antichrist. And so Revelation 13:1, we kind of keep going back there. We kind of keep seeing, just how that correlates there with what Daniel's telling us. And it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon the heads the name of blasphemy. And again, when I read that before I kind of studied Daniel, now that beast coming out of that all makes sense to me now. I kind of connected the dots for me. So we go on right there to some of the blasphemies, and it kind of, as we continue on right there, and this is the one that kind of always for us, it says, where's it lost? Oh, there it is, and it says, so he's going to speak great words against the Most High, he's going to be blasphemous, and then the next phrase right there, he shall wear out the saints of the Most High. Now what does that mean? What's going to happen? God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to God's people? We're going to be persecuted. We're going to face trials and tribulations. And I can see here why, we say as we get into Daniel's, in the last verse here, but let me ask you this. Has God's people, have we been persecuted in the past? Trials and tribulations? Is it happening today? Is it going to happen in the future? How do we know that? How do we know that's going to happen to us?
Well, we see it now ourselves, and of course we know from history that it's happened to
shall suffer persecution, and it kind of relates to that and stuff like that. You know, and there are other verses. I was just kind of want to kind of get to it, but yeah, but again, and yes, we don't have to like it, but it really starts blocking. You starts really. We got to keep on thinking, who's eternal? Who's already in the end? What's the end? What's the end? How's the end going to be? God is going to be victorious, and He is going to judge all of us at the end. You know, and that's hard for us to wait a minute. You know, because we want our best, we want it now. But we have to have hope in the fact that in the end, who reigns, whose kingdom is going to be eternal? It's going to be God's. And again, that's just one of those things we got to. This makes it tough as little human beings right here, as flawed as we are. It's hard for us to understand that kind of way in that day. But that's what makes it, but it's also what makes us human. It's why we get saved too. So, but anyway, but again, that's what I'm trying to say is, you know, yeah, I'm not saying you don't get upset, get persecuted. Yeah, I will be. But I can't let it keep me from doing we can't let it keep us from doing God's work here.
You know, we don't, suffer persecution like people, like say in the Middle East that are Christian or in China or wherever. We're not afraid to come out and worship, and we're not afraid to talk about God. And people say we're persecuted in the United States. I mean, it's a different, maybe
I guess it's all based on, I guess it's all relative to what the environment is, you know, and it's, you know, that's why I threw in the trials and tribulations and things, because, you know, it's one of the things, you know, you use persecution as kind of an umbrella term to cover all that people, you know, going against the Christian way and things of that nature. And I think we have to keep that in mind, that there are people that are truly, who are witnessing, who are spreading that word, who are truly putting their lives in danger each day. And, you know, that's here, for us, our idea of a little tribulation, whatever, you know, gets scorned or mocked a little bit, people making fun of us, you know, whatever. Whereas, China imprisonment, I guess probably over in the Middle East and the Muslim countries, that's probably a capital offense in those countries, I guess. I mean, I would figure the most extreme ones, speaking out, you know, preaching Jesus. But anyway, but yeah, we stay here, and again, it kind of gets back, and we dwell, and I said, I think that's kind of what I was hoping this lesson is. At the end of the day, you know, let's understand that needs to, yeah, it bothers us, but at the end of the day, also, and I think, you know, it's almost like when somebody is doing that to you, you go, now all you do is just proving the word of God right. Because, you know, saw an angel standing in the sun and cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of the heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God, that you may eat the flesh of the kings, and the flesh of the captains, and the flesh of the mighty men, and the flesh of the horses, and the them that sit up them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, wicked, small and great. And I saw the beasts and the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and the army. The beast was taken, and with him the false prophets wrought miracles for him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. Those both were cast alive into a lake. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire burning with brimstone, and the remnant were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeded out of the mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. And that right there, that, God's, that's the fate of the Antichrist and his false prophet. That's their ultimate. It says it right there. So, and I think, hopefully, like I said, God's going to strip away the power of the Antichrist. He's going to destroy his dominion. He's going to cast him in the lake of fire. God's promises will be fulfilled. That's an all caps right there. I mean, that's certain. Judgment will come for those against God and his people. So what's the issue? We want it on our timeline, not God's. And what happens when we ignore God's timeline for us? When we ignore God's timeline, what does that do? Do we have examples of God's people not following God's timing and consequences in the Bible? Abraham and Sarah, Genesis 21 said, what about King Solomon? Samuel told him, hey, wait on me, then we'll make a sacrifice. Samuel was a little late. When Saul decided he could do himself, how did that work out for him? God took away his kingdom. Esau, basically sold his inheritance for one meal day. Good way. It's hard, but God's got it in the end. We just got to trust and obey his plan. And just, I found this. The first thing is when we start going on our own time, other than God's time, that's immediately what we do. We shut out God's will for our life. So we don't want that. The moment we get ahead, we step out of his will. It's like we're talking about King Saul. And, and here's the second one. That could cause blessings to be delayed or even denied. And, I think God rewards us right there when we stay patient, stay in his time. We're going to be blessed. And this is what I'm reading from here. It's like snap judgments and impulses. I can't even say the word. Impulsiveness is what I say. Maybe excuse for children, but not for mature Christians. It says God is more concerned with your maturity than your blessings. So, it's just like I've always said, one of my favorite things being in the education business for 30 years is watching how they educate. Well, that makes me impulsive snap judgments to react to situations. So I've said there before you even get whether it's at state level, local level, or even school level, I've asked principals, really thought this through yet? We make snap judgment, we really thought this through. And it's kind of like that when we start deciding we're going to start pushing the issue with timing on something, you need to sit there and think it through. Pray. The biggest thing is pray to God to make you understand where you have a fellowship where you can kind of understand the timeline for us. And then finally, by getting out of his timeline, we can bring pain upon ourselves and others. Abraham and Sarah were promised a son, but they weren't content to wait for the promise to come to pass, so they took matters in their own hands. And, when Abraham had a child with Hagar, he gave birth to Ishmael. Think about what happens out there, the vision right there, and it's all the pain and suffering that they had to go through. So, but what should give us, because again,